And a very pleasant good evening, everyone. I'm Lon Mitchell, the Public Information Manager of the Lucas County Board of DD, and I will be your moderator for this evening's voter forum. This evening, we have invited the candidates for Lucas County Commissioner, Lucas County Sheriff, and Probate Court. Later in the evening, we'll be able to ask questions of the Secretary of State's ADA Director, Brett Harbage, about any concerns we have about voting accessibility and anything that we might question about polls or polling locations or absentee voting. Voter forums are an annual event sponsored by the Toledo Lucas County Commission on Disabilities, the Ability Center, and Partners for Inclusion, with the support of the Lucas County Board of Developmental Disabilities, Salute, and the Deaf Services Center. And two of the DSC's interpreters are with us this evening, Dave and Scott. The virtual world is something new for our voter forums, and I want to thank Lisa Justice from the Ability Center for her technology skill. She's our director this evening. I also want to acknowledge Ron Volk, who is chairing the event. The proceedings tonight will be recorded. The Ability Center will make the recordings available, and I may use some of the excerpts from tonight on my radio show. Here's our format. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to make a presentation to our audience. We are asking you to include in your presentation how you would be addressing issues important to individuals with disabilities, such as transportation, housing, employment, and inclusion in the community. We will then take some time for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Lisa will be looking for you, or you may use the reactions button at the bottom of your Zoom screen or the chat board. We'll start off this evening with the candidates for Lucas County Commissioner. And first up, I'd like to introduce Ron Murphy. Mr. Murphy.
Good evening.
Good evening. So in your presentation, 5 minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions.
So I'm Ron. So I'm Ron Murphy, as you know, running for Lucas County Commissioner. A little bit about myself. I'm 40 years old. I'm married, been married now for 18 years. My wife and I have 2 children, Romero, who's 22, Dominic, who's 20. I grew up in West Toledo, went to Whitmer High School, graduated in '98. Being a Republican, it's surprising, but I actually grew up in a Democrat household. My dad was a union member of the USCW for 30 years. They later on bought a business and operated a small business for about 10 years or so. A lot of the things that I base my decisions on are my life experiences. And unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of experience when it comes to people with disabilities. There wasn't anybody who had major disabilities in my family or my friends as I was growing up. But a lot of the things that I learned over life, through life, is that you need to be able to speak to people and listen to people and ask them what their needs are. So that really has a lot to do with where I work now, which is Neighborhood Properties. And that's a mental health agency that helps people who are trying to get people who are homeless off the street and get them into some more permanent housing. I've been there for 15 years, and throughout that time, I've listened to a lot of stories. I've heard a lot of people tell me all, their situations and their problems, and I've done the best of my ability to try to help them any way that I can. And so public service is really something that I love. As I'm a proud Christian, so it really has a lot to do with me helping people and trying to give back as much as I can with how I walk in my faith in Christ. Basically, I want to try to listen, learn, and do every single thing I can for the people in Lucas County, no matter what, if you're disabled or not. It's important to me that you have a voice. It's important to me that things get done for you. I have a feeling that there's been a slowdown in services and things getting done because of the COVID crisis. And I know that that's going to be an issue. I know that our baby boomers who are getting older that's going to wind up being an issue. And there's some things that we need to address, and we need to be, ready to go, on target at all times, trying to help out as much as we can. And that's what really drives me. I love being able to help people. I'm always ready to go. I'm always looking forward to the next opportunity to help someone. And I hope that the people of Lucas County will give me a chance, and let me show you what I'm capable of doing for you. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy from anybody listening? You may use the chat box or the reactions button to raise your hand. Lisa will be looking. While we wait to see if there are any questions, talk to me a bit about how you would be receptive to individuals with disabilities if they were to come to you with an issue, say about transportation or being included in community activities.
Well, I mean, I care about people, and if someone came to me with a problem, I'd show them respect, and I'd listen to them and try to understand, where they're coming from. I try to treat everybody with respect and dignity. I want to make sure that they feel respected and listened to. That's really important to me in my campaign. Pretty much it, really. I mean, we should treat everybody with love, and we are all God's children. And I feel that that's important, that people know that they're respected and loved and taken seriously.
One of the major issues for anyone with a disability is transportation. Unfortunately, the way TARTA is funded these days, transportation is limited. There are parts of Lucas County that are not served by our public transit. TARTA is hopeful of being able to change that from a sales tax to a rather property tax to a sales tax. What is your view, and how would you support that?
Well, they did the study on TARTA, and they found out that the ridership was down considerably. I think a sales tax is definitely something to consider. I think it's a better way to pay for TARTA, but I kind of disagree with how much money we need to put into TARTA, because I think technology's catching up. We can utilize that, and technology, the more it's around, the cheaper it becomes. So we need to get with the times. We need to upgrade our services, using technology. But I don't think it's a smart thing to do to keep putting a ton of money into something that really isn't being utilized as much. Now, tarps, on the other hand, I think a little differently about that. I'd like to see more of like a package deal for folks who use tarps. I noticed the pricing, $3 for ridership, and then they try to play it off as you're getting a deal if you do more, but really you're just multiplying it. So I'd like to see more of a package deal. And I think it's a great service. I love tarps. I think it's wonderful. TARTA, it's not being utilized. I think we'd be better off figuring out where we actually need TARTA and utilizing it that way, and where we don't. And I think that would save us a lot of money.
Mr. Murphy, if someone would like to contact you directly with a question or a concern, how may they do that?
Well, they can just email me at murphyforlucascounty@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook, Ron Murphy for Lucas County. I'm on Twitter as well. I try to use social media as much as I can to be able to respond with people. I mean, we have technology that we're able to do that, so I try to respond to people and communicate with them any way I possibly can. But I encourage it, actually. I mean, I need to know what people are thinking and what their concerns are, so that way I can help them better.
Thank you very much for being with us this evening.
Thanks for having me.
Next up is Tina Skeldon-Wozniak, who is the current president of the Lucas County Commission, and
Thank you.
we welcome you.
Oh, thank you so much for this terrific opportunity to talk with everybody tonight. The Board of County Commissioners believes deeply in working with stakeholders that advocate for persons living with disabilities. What we see this as a key responsibility of being county elected officials, and so we've enjoyed what I'd like to say the theme of my comments are the collaboration, both in the years previous and the ideas that we can all generate moving forward. We believe strongly that some of the issues faced by persons living with disabilities have had to be tackled through a tremendous amount of coordination and collaboration. One was living with the COVID pandemic that we're all going through. One of the opportunities that we had was to ask a member of the Ability Center to serve on the Emergency Operations Center, which is our key responsibility to open and operate during a pandemic or another event that would happen in our community that calls for key coordination. So through that partnership, we made sure that there was opportunities for equipment and loaning of necessary items should we have someone that needed to be housed in our emergency hotel service that we provided. I think you're going to hear this from Commissioner Gerken as well. We took the charge of putting the TARDA task force together. We called it a blue ribbon panel to study the TARDA problems, because we knew that that the entire community was suffering from a lack of progress. I personally, I'm sure the other commissioner will probably also share, we've been proponents of moving from property tax to sales tax, because we think it'll be a system that creates greater resources to do more services for persons that need to be able to get to work. Right now, somebody from Toledo can't get to work out at Springfield Township, and there are the delays in having people have more opportunities for mobility, for work opportunities, et cetera, have really been hindered by some of the TARDA problems. We have worked very, very hard to work with various entities to make sure that we have opportunities to look at how is the housing stock, how is the workforce development agency assisting with the persons in the disability community. One of the cool things that's going on right now that I'm interested in sharing is that the city and the county are sharing, looking at the future comprehensive plan. There hasn't been a master plan for quite some time. And in that, there will be a great opportunity for the disability community to be a part of sharing both the housing issues as well as employment issues. And so I think you're going to see a lot of momentum moving forward as what do we want our community to be like? What do we want our city and our county to be like? And how can we be inclusive so we don't lack in being a great place for persons with living with a disability to have all the opportunities in the world, to have a great life, a great opportunity for recreation and play, and to feel like this is a welcoming community. Just one last thing, and I'll be quiet because I know my 5 months is probably, or 5 minutes is probably up. The commissioners in 2008 realized that there was a commission on disability at the city that was begun by Mayor Jack Ford in 2004. When we became commissioners, we said, why is there a political boundary? Why is the Commission on Disabilities not available to all persons that live in Lucas County? So we created this commission since that time, and we're very proud that we have staffed it, and we've made sure that we've been able to be listening to people on what changes need to be done in order for everyone to have a good opportunity to have advocacy, to have their issues brought to the forefront and fix the problems. So good to be with everybody tonight, and thank you so much for this opportunity, and I hope to be your commissioner for another 4 years.
And the Commission on Disabilities that you just referenced is one of the sponsors tonight.
I'm so proud of that.
Welcome. let me ask you again to focus on that TARTA issue and TARPs. What's the next step as far as the county commissioners?
I think that one of the good things that's happening is there's a brand new, there's new leadership, that the TARTA board is willing to do the things. One of the problems that we found when they did the task force was they found out that they didn't ask all the stakeholders, what are the problems? So it fell short. There isn't, I think there is a growing desire to have in a progressive have all of us work in a progressive way to find ways in which we can do better. Communities across the country are changing the way they do their routing. Communities across the country are finding the ways to fund properly so we can have new buses that have high technology, and that there's routing, that the routing of a bus from one location to another isn't stuck in the mud and done the old-fashioned way. I really have confidence that they took to heart our report and they want to use it, but they're really launching on their own and starting to do a better job. And I hope the persons living with disability and the stakeholders that are having this forum tonight feel that they're every bit a part of the changes that are going to occur moving forward. It seems as though that's the case, and if not, we'd sure love to understand what those issues are.
And you're supporting the sales tax.
100. I've been an advocate of that for as long as I can remember. It was very clear that property tax is not meeting the needs of the proper progressive transportation opportunities for a community of our size.
And you mentioned planning, long-range planning for the community. How would an individual become involved, or how would you suggest we provide input?
Well, that's a good question. So right now, they're just simply at the exploratory stage where they're putting data together and finding out how does our community look as it sits today. As they move forward, they're going to blow this up into a comprehensive plan where everyone can be involved. When I review just some of the small pieces of the exploratory assessment that's been, just in the works here for a few months, a large part of it is going to be housing and mobility. Those items on many occasions you could see where they were being sensitive to persons living with disabilities, inclusion. How can we make sure that housing stock meets the needs of everyone that lives in our community? How do we make those changes? How can everyone have access maybe to waterways or water features in their neighborhood, or increased living on the Maumee River type opportunities? So I was very hopeful. Sam Meldon is also working on that. Sam works with the Ability Center, and he'll be very conscientious about making sure that when we take the step to do the new comprehensive plan, that stakeholders are at the table. I certainly will work to see that occurs as well.
Do you know of any new developments on the pediatric level, such as schools for children with Asperger's or inclusive community activities specifically for children?
I wish I could be informed enough to tell you that, but I would love to work on that issue with everyone and see what it is that we can. One of the things about the Commission on Disability and everybody that's involved, really, we can use those tools that we have to bring the problems to the group, and then have those things, have those issues kind of get into the weeds and help with those various things. I am a social worker by training, and so I would be very interested in how our schools are doing with inclusion with persons with Asperger's or other conditions on the spectrum, and like to see. I'd like to know about that myself.
Do we have any other questions? All right. Thank you, Commissioner Wozniak.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thanks,
you.
everyone. I really appreciate it.
Commissioner Pete Gerken,
Good evening, Len. Good evening, everybody.
nice to have you with us. And this is what term for you on the county commissioners?
Maybe fourth,
Fourth?
elected in 2005. So for those that don't know me, and maybe you do, if you don't, my name is Pete Gerken. I'm current Lucas County Commissioner. I was first elected to the job in 2005. Prior to that, I did almost 9 years on Toledo City Council as an elected at-large representative. So I have some public service and some history of elected office, and I've learned a lot in 20 some years of serving the public, and I've been fortunate enough to return to office by the public each and every time, and hope to do so today. So after hearing this, I would ask for your vote and remembrance on election day. To do that, a little bit about me. I'm a lifelong resident of Toledo, Lucas County, except for a few years I went to college in Detroit. I'm a graduate of Central Catholic High School, the year 1969, best year of the last decade. I got a degree in 1991 from the University of Toledo, and I also had a 30-year career at the Jeep plant. I'm a retiree of Jeep in the UAW. I spent a lot of my time in service to my Jeep workers as an elected union official, and when I retired, I was on the international staff of the UAW servicing the plants and the needs of the Jeep plant here in Toledo. So I have a career of service in both the private sector and on the professional side. Personally, I've been married to my wife, Polly, for 21 years now. And between us, we have, between the two of us, we have 4 kids who are all adults. And I will say I'm the proud parent of one daughter, Kelly, who was born with profound disabilities in 1980. So I'm a parent of a disabled child. Unfortunately, she died before she was 5 years old. So I've had the personal experience of disability in a real life way, and that will never leave you, as you know. Kind of to answer your questions, what's our relationship, what's our issues and positions on the disability community? I think that's a great question, and I'd point to our record to do that. And I'm fortunate enough to be around enough to have some record. First of all, I think our positions is we need, as a public officials, and we've tried to do this on the Board of Commissioners, is to create opportunity, number one, for public awareness. We do have a pulpit where we can speak and gather public awareness, and we've done that. Tina said it so well. In 2008, the county commissioner said there needs to be a countywide commission on disabilities, one of the sponsors. So we went ahead and, as a board, created that and have appointed members and have been engaged with this commission, who has served us well and taught us much as we've done major projects in the last few years. So I think creating an opportunity for public awareness is one thing we can do to help the relationship between us and the disability community. And the other is engagement with the disability community and their advocacy groups. It's not just this commission, but there are great advocacy groups for people with disabilities that we interface all the time with. When we were back meeting live, you would see them at our meetings. We have at one point even created office space on the 8th floor for advocate of people with of the community with disabilities. And we try every major project that we take on, from the Huntington Center to the upcoming hotel to the rebuild convention center to Hensville. We've always had the input and engagement of the disability community. And then thirdly, here's what our relationship is. We try to do action. We have actions on what we've promoted and what we've learned. And I'll give you a couple quick examples. Back when the city switched over to waste management or Republic Services to do their trash collection, there was an issue early on of people with disabilities really had a hard time getting those big cans to the curb. And because of our relationship, we quickly found out how that could be solved, went into a problem-solving mode with them, hired people to be able to interface with people with disabilities that couldn't get their cans to the curb, and get them back, carry in and carry back service early on in that proposition. When the Huntington Center opened, and after some time, we realized that maybe our scoreboards and our site monitors weren't clear enough. We were able to go back, we listened, and we acted to make it. As Tina said, in the COVID response, our EOC immediately went to make sure that we were signing, that we were communicating clearly to the disability community from day one in a critical pandemic. And you talk about TARPS funding for transportation. When it ran out of funding for a while, we stepped up and raised money for a continuation of TARPS services to do it. So we have a lot of actions behind us. I'll give you one I think that's important, maybe overlooked. when we're doing plan commission studies, and we believe in walkable neighborhoods, we made sure that subdivisions that are going down today put in sidewalks first. Not everybody with disabilities has to live in one place. When you're living into new communities, we made sure that sidewalks were a requirement of new neighbors. Those are just several of many activities that we've done in support of the disability community. And we've done that because we've listened and learned and engaged with them.
And if somebody wants to get involved or get your ear, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I have two email addresses. One that's in public, pgherkin@co.lucas.oh.com. A private email that I respond to very much. It's just Commissioner Gherkin at gmail.com. I think that's probably the most effective way if they really want a quick answer on a private issue or a public statement. That's a great way to do it. Or call my office, 419-213-4084, and Quinlan Tyler would be happy to pass your message along to us. But I'm really excited to talk about disability issues tonight and some of those questions. We'll say something about TARTA if that's still a question you want to answer.
It is, yes. Where do you stand with the whole TARTA planning?
Well, I think as Tina said, through her leadership and the rest of our support, we did the TARTA task force. We put together a great group of people from all walks of the community. They came out with a pretty comprehensive report. A report's good, but what are you going to do with it is where we're at now. We were dismayed, quite frankly, Lon, and to the audience, when Maumee is the last community in line to allow the sales tax to even just be put on the ballot for people to vote to, declined to do that. That was a setback for the whole community. I'm a believer that sales tax is the way to go to do it. It's a fair distribution. It generates more money. It will allow everybody from Holland to Oregon, which is not getting services now, to get services. But that can't be the only piece. Here's what we found from the TARTA study. The state of Ohio has shorted us on transportation funding critically. So I am not one just to say tax ourselves and not get any help. There's help, and we've lobbied through the legislature. We'll continue to do it. You know, Ohio is 48th in the country on per capita spending on public transportation. 48th in the country. We're 10 times less than what Michigan and Pennsylvania provide to communities for public transportation. So I don't want to just tax ourselves or expand taxes ourselves. We have an obligation to go get the monies that I think our community is owed for public transportation.
So what would be the next step for the county commissioners with TARTA?
Well, our next step is to continue to support them as they are under leadership of Director Ken Dunham, become innovative. I know we have worked with them, and we continue through our workforce development offices to find ways that we can get people to jobs they're creating. We just talked with Commissioner Dunham today, CEO Dunham today, about Amazon, how we get people out there, how people with disabilities can access buses. And, and when it comes to good quality public transportation, I don't think people with disabilities should just have to rely only on TARPs. We need to build a system that's accessible for everybody on its front face. And yes, TARP serves an important service that will never have to be diminished. But what if we just really had a service to work for everyone? Not just the poor, not just the homeless, but maybe I live in South Toledo and River Road. Maybe I could, I should take the bus the 4 miles downtown and meet all those people that could be riding it with me. So we continue to do action of bringing other funding to TARTA to do that. We continue to support the actions of the new TARTA board and leadership, both through advocacy and awareness. And we're going to work tirelessly to make this thing a sales tax oriented proposition as soon as we can.
And just a point of clarification, Commissioner Wozniak mentioned the long-range planning that will be coming, but that's for everything we're talking about, not just disability issues, but we're talking about everything in the community.
So, and that's great to do, and we need to do that, but I also think that we can, in the meantime of that, do some of the things that we did with like codes of building codes. We went to, we heard from the disability community when the state and the local people were doing different zoning codes on multi-unit housing, and that 1 out of 4 units should be handicap accessible. Some development didn't want to do that, but we stood tall on that. So we can continue to go to bat for things like sidewalks and subdivisions. multi-housing that has at least a proportionate share of disability-based amenities in public housing. As our housing trends start to peak up again, we need to have that advocacy. So I love the master plan, disability, but that doesn't mean we wait for that to happen.
Do we have any other questions for Commissioner Gerken? Well, I want to thank you. It's been good.
Commission, thank the public, and I would ask for your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you. We will be hearing later on this evening from Brett Harbage. He is the ADA coordinator for the Ohio Secretary of State, and we can ask him questions and clarifications on any issues we might have regarding the myths around voting when you have a disability, such as, can you have a support person at the polls with you? How safe is our absentee balloting going to be this year? What are some of the accessibility issues we should be on the lookout for? He'll be here a bit later on this evening. Next up, we'd like to hear from the candidates for Lucas County Sheriff. And up first on my list is Brett Warner. And Mr. Warner, if you'd like to turn your video on.
Good evening.
Welcome tonight. And you have the floor for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'd start by letting everybody know that I've been in law enforcement for 28 years. I'm currently a command officer with the Lucas County Sheriff's Office. I also have a 23-year military career. I was active duty Air Force, Air National Guard, and Air Force Reserves. Excuse me. I want to jump right into the subject tonight because I am at a veterans event, locked in a room. So if you hear noises coming from behind me, I apologize. But I want to get right into the subject. I want to start personally and then talk professionally. When I was in my early 20s, I met my best friend in life, who is also now my wife. And she had a 6-month-old son. And I got to know him for the next 3 years. He never spoke a word, but he was probably one of the best teachers I've ever had in my life. He opened my eyes to a lot of really important things that have stayed with me throughout my entire life. One of the things that I think my eyes were open to in the early stages of my 3-year relationship with him was us being in a public place, and he had 2 different machines that usually you had to plug in. One was a suction machine, and one was an oxygen type machine. And I remember being in a public place and not being able to find a place to plug those things in to do what we needed to do, and having to leave that public place. And so my eyes were opened early on that there are a lot of needs that are sometimes not met in the public sector, and I've always been very aware of that. And with that, moving on in my personal life, I've had very unique opportunities to understand that disabilities are not always obvious. With her son, there were things that you could obviously see. Those disabilities were there, but there are so many people in our lives and people that I've had in my lives where those disabilities are not obvious. When you look at them, they seem to look at, they don't seem like they might have disabilities. So we have to understand that sometimes those disabilities are not so obvious. And professionally, I think where we talk about law enforcement and disabilities, I think it's really important that law enforcement officers get the opportunity to get the training that they need so when they're dealing with people with disabilities, they can identify that, and most importantly, know how to help them, get them the resources they need, or call the people that they need. And I'm not going to pretend that I have some great idea of how we're going to get these officers this information, because it already exists. That training is in place, and that training is very effective for those who have been through it. As a law enforcement leader, my hope is to expand that training and get that training to all law enforcement officers. It is a great program that helps officers understand how to deal with people with disabilities, how to identify them. It makes the law enforcement officer much more effective. And as sheriff, one of my goals would be to make sure that we expand that training and make sure that we get that training to all officers, and then to not just stop there. We have to follow up on it. There are changes that happen in law enforcement on a regular basis, just as there is with that training that is provided up. So every time there's an update, every time there's a change, every time there's additional information, we need to make sure that we're getting that information to the people that need it most, the officers who are out there going to the scenes and helping and trying to help people the best they can. So to me, it's a very personal subject that has spilled over into my life, and I really want to make sure that officers have the training that they need to help people who have disabilities. So
one of the issues, especially with someone with a developmental disability, may be the inability to communicate or be able to express the emotions just right. Is that one of the issues that you see as part of your training?
Absolutely. You have to be able to go into a situation. First of all, every law enforcement officer's job is to protect people, to keep people safe. I say that all the time, to keep people safe. And in order to do that, you have to have an open mind to see what the issues, what's happening at the scene. And not to change the subject on you, but one of the things that I've been fortunate to do throughout my career is go into schools and teach drug prevention programs. But one of my favorite things to do is stranger danger. I've been doing that since the very beginning of my career, nearly 28 years ago, in a lot of different ways. And I'll never forget years ago when I got a phone call and I was asked to come in to a school that specifically all the students had disabilities. And they asked me if I could do a stranger danger that was specifically geared toward those students. And I took that as a opportunity. And I was able to ask them questions to get a good idea of the backgrounds and what we have to focus on the needs of those people to be able to provide them the same information that we provide everybody else. I was successful. I feel I was successful that day, and the teacher seemed very reassuring that I was successful that day. I mean, I wondered a lot about it, but I got to use that curriculum, change that curriculum at different times throughout my career, and I think that's important too. Those people deserve the same information, the same opportunities that we provide to everybody else. So, sorry, I didn't mean to get away from what you asked me there, but yes,
That's okay.
we have to be able to be open-minded and be able to identify those things that we're trained to identify. That if you're not trained to identify them, obviously that creates an issue. Sometimes we've all heard stories of people with disabilities who have been incarcerated because their disability wasn't identified, and they didn't get the resources that they need until later.
Back to that issue on communication. One of the questions we had come in is that Toledo has a significant population of people who are deaf. Do you have any plans to instruct officers specifically in American Sign Language?
I think that's a very interesting thought, but actually just recently, I see at the bottom of the screen, everything that I say comes out in Word. And that is really awesome that you have that set up. But I actually just recently discovered that there is an app that has been developed that can be used by people who are in those situations. And I think that if we can use technology, and I'm a huge advocate of using technology in law enforcement to the full extent in which we can, but maybe this is a way to make it happen immediately. I mean, yes, should we find those officers? I mean, we're having trouble finding officers, period. Finding officers who are going to be able to have that ability is going to be even more of a challenge, but maybe technology can help us with that.
Do you think you'd be able to, and this is a question that came in again about the deaf community. Do you think it would be possible to hire or interview an applicant for law enforcement who does have a hearing issue?
Yes,
Well, that puts you on the spot, I know, but
I believe so. I believe that there's no reason why we couldn't entertain that. Um, I've never believed in limiting somebody, because of limitations like that, because they're not always limitations. Sometimes that provides them with a strength somewhere else. I would not be closed-minded at all to that, not at all. In fact, the possibility intrigues me.
I see in our little chat that there's a notation. There have been deaf police officers in New York. So there you go. Thank you, Mr. Warner. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, Mike Navarre, candidate for Lucas County Sheriff. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, I will start off and tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Mike Navarre. I am a candidate for Lucas County Sheriff. There are 3 candidates. I'm currently the police chief in the city of Oregon. I've been there for just about 9 years. Prior to working in Oregon, I spent 34 years with the Toledo Police Department, the last 13 years as the chief of police. So if you do your math, I've been in law enforcement for about 43 years. I've been a chief of police for 22 years. I grew up in Toledo in the Point Place area. I attended Central Catholic High School and the University of Toledo. I began working full-time right out of high school. I didn't have that luxury of going away to college. I would have liked to have done that like my 4 children have done, but I began working and going to school at night. And it took me a while. It took me about 9 years, but I finally got a degree in criminal justice. And I've been able to use that degree and part of my success in getting promoted up through the ranks. I served in every rank in the Toledo Police Department, from sergeant to lieutenant to captain to deputy chief, and was appointed as the chief of police in 1998. I have a lot of experience, administrative experience. I think that is something that will be very helpful to me if I'm successful in being elected as the next Lucas County Sheriff. As the chief of police in Toledo, I got involved at the state level, first on the Ohio Association of Chiefs of Police, of which I'm a member. I'm still a member. I got involved in the legislative committee. And as a result of being a member of that committee, I am in a position where I review and comment on every piece of legislation that is proposed in both the House and the Ohio Senate with any connection whatsoever to the criminal justice and law enforcement. So it's been very eye-opener for me. We've seen a lot of good pieces of legislation. We've seen a lot of bad pieces of legislation, and things that we generally oppose don't get passed. If we are in opposition and it looks like it's going to get passed, usually they listen to us and we're able to make some revisions. Over the years, we've seen a number of legislation that have, I shouldn't say a number, but we've seen some that have some connection to individuals with disability. The most recent one that I can think of was a couple of years ago, and that was House Bill 115, which had to deal with individuals that had trouble communicating, either through their speech, or they may have been some type of mental disability. They could have been deaf, and driving a car, because you can get a driver's license with those disabilities. And there have been some very controversial, very tragic instances where individuals with disabilities have been harmed or arrested and sometimes even shot because of their inability to communicate with police officers. So we wanted to allow individuals with driver's licenses to register by use of a form with the state of Ohio so that information could be entered into a database. And when an officer stops that car and that license plate number is read to the dispatcher and entered into a computer, that information comes up and is communicated back to the officers immediately so that they know before they approach that vehicle that that person has a communication disability. And that serves the purpose of preventing those tragic circumstances from occurring. In addition to serving on that legislative committee, I was appointed in 2014 by Governor John Kasich to a task force for improving police community relations. And I was the only chief of police in the state of Ohio to serve on that task force. And that task force continued after Governor Kasich left office and under the current governor, Mike DeWine. I served 2 terms on that task force, and we had an opportunity to make a lot of recommendations for police reform. And I'm a very strong advocate for police reform. And that began back in 2014. I don't know if you remember, but there were a lot of very high profile incidents involving police officers across this country, beginning in Ferguson, Missouri, Staten Island, New York, involving Eric Garner, Tamir Rice in Cleveland, Ohio, John Crawford III in Beaver Creek. 2 of those in Ohio really pushed the governor into doing something. So we worked hard, we traveled around the state, we listened to a lot of people, we spent a lot of time, make some very strong recommendations. Unfortunately, a lot of those fell on deaf ears. We didn't make a lot of progress. Most of what we were proposing dealt with training. And as Brett Warner stated, training is so critically important in law enforcement. I recall back in 1990 when the ADA was first passed, we had extensive training because this was all new to us and what we needed to know about the ADA and how it affected our facilities, how it affected our employment decisions, promotion decisions, and providing reasonable accommodations. And I don't recall, and that was what, 30 years ago, I don't recall getting that refresher training since that time. So I think that's one of the commitments I would make if I'm elected as Lucas County Sheriff, is to provide that training to all of our employees and to make sure that the ADA and its 5 titles are in full compliance throughout the Lucas County Sheriff's Office, and as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Lucas County, ensure that the businesses and other employees throughout Lucas County are aware of the provisions of the ADA and that they are in compliant. So I think the job of becoming Lucas County Sheriff would be very, very challenging, but training is so critically important. One of my biggest frustrations with the chiefs in the state of Ohio and our legislature is the lack of a mandate for training. In the state of Ohio, other than annual qualification with a firearm, there is no minimum in-service training requirement. And there are at least 100 topics that officers should be trained in, at least once every 5 years. Some they should be trained in every year. Good progressive police departments like Toledo, like Oregon, most of our suburbs, they do the training. But throughout the state, it's just not being done. And that's a shame. And that's been my biggest frustration And I will continue to push for that as if I'm elected sheriff.
When you were mentioning a database for
Yes.
drivers with disabilities, is participation in that database going to be mandatory, or is it voluntary?
It's voluntary. The individuals are provided a form that they can fill out, and they submit it to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. And that form and the information from that form is entered into a database. It's in their best interest to participate. So that information is in the database, whether they are a driver or perhaps they're just stopped on a street corner acting suspicious, and the officers submit the information from their state of Ohio identification. Both of those mechanisms are in place to get that information into a database and back to the officers almost instantaneously, so that the officers know that there is a communication disability. We also utilize the CAD. So when the CAD is a computer-aided dispatch, and if we know that we're going to a house where there's an individual with some type of disability, that information can be entered into the CAD. So when the address comes up on the screen, there's also an alert for the dispatcher to let the officers know that the person at this address may be have some form of autism, may be deaf, may be partially blind. We use that for officer safety also if we know that there's people in there in that particular house that have threatened officers or have used weapons in the past, so that officers know that, so that before they respond. Technology is a wonderful thing. We need to use that to our greatest advantage for the safety of our residents and for the safety of our officers.
And Brett Warner, I see you're still with us. I forgot to ask you, I'll ask Mike Navarre first, if people would like to ask you a question on a personal level or get in touch with you with a comment, how would they do that?
Well, they can call my office. My personal line number is 419-698-7099, or they can send me an email. My email, my personal email is mnavarre1955@gmail.com. And I check that several times a day. So that's the best way to get through to me is by email.
And Brett Warner, your contact information, please.
WarnerForSheriff.com is the website. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. We're on Instagram. Brett at WarnerForSheriff.com is the email. Brett at WarnerForSheriff.com is the email that they can send an email directly to me.
Thanks. I was 24 years with the National Guard, 17 with the 180th. So.
Oh, were you?
I was.
I was there from 90 to 99.
I think I got out before then.
Thank you for your service.
You too. You too. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us this evening. I appreciate that. And we have the probate judge with us this evening, Jack Poffenberger. Correct me if I'm wrong, Your Honor, but you're running unopposed.
That's correct.
But it's still a very important office, especially for people with disabilities. And maybe not everyone understands just what you're involved in on a continuing level. Estate planning and guardianship issues.
Our court's a very busy place, Lon, as you know, and I get involved in a lot of different things. Sometimes things I didn't even know that I was supposed to do. I recently appointed some city council members. I didn't even know that was one of my duties till that came up. But I do want to thank you for hosting this forum tonight. It's a much better type forum than the forum I watched for candidates on TV the other night. Maybe they could take some lessons the way you're doing this. This seems to work a little bit better. But you're right. I'll say a little bit about myself. Yeah, I'm different than the other candidates you've heard from tonight in that, number one, yes, I do not have an opponent this fall. Number two, I'm not a legislator. I'm not an executive. I don't make policy. I don't allocate funds, but I do deal a lot with individuals with disabilities. Our court, as Lon said, we do a lot of things there, but a lot of things that we do is we try to look out for people who are unable to look out for themselves. And that comes in the form of children and guardians and adoptions, comes in form of guardianship. So I'm mostly familiar for our forum tonight with the Department of Developmental Disabilities. I not only appoint two of the board members on that board, I'm very involved in those issues. And other members on the panel have said tonight, they have involvement personally. One of my granddaughters in Columbus has severe developmental disabilities, so I'm involved with that area on a personal note also. But I would like to thank the Commission on Disabilities, Ron Volk, the co-chair, who's one of my appointees to the Board of DD. I also appoint Dr. Eileen Quinn. Another board member, Scott Noonan, is one of my employees. So I'm more familiar with the board in that aspect. But I would like to focus really on one thing tonight, and I'm really glad you invited me. I've been a judge for a long time. I was elected twice as a municipal judge in the 1980s. I've been elected to 5 6-year terms as the probate judge, and barring anything unusual, I'll be reelected to my 6th 6-year term and last term on the probate court this time, because judges can be aged out. So I would be too old to run for another term, but hopefully things will work out this fall. But the one thing I want to talk about tonight with the time that I have left is this is really an exciting time. For those of you who involved with the individuals with developmental disabilities, we've been trying for some time to bring into being a guardianship services board. For many years in Ohio, the only corporate guardian that was allowed was APSI. And if you're familiar with the process, APSI has a waiting list, and APSI has had a waiting list. And so last year, the state legislature passed a law that allowed each county to have its own guardianship services board. And in a time of very little collaboration between groups, we have basically 6 members who have come together here. The main members are the probate court, the County Board of Developmental Disabilities, and I can't say enough about Lori Mariucci. She's wonderful, the director of that board. Also, the Mental Health Board, Scott Silak, who's the director of mental health. We're the 3 main players: the probate court, the Board of DD, and the Mental Health Board. Other partners with us in this experience are Job and Family Services, the Area Office on Aging, and the county commissioners. And we will actually be appearing Tuesday before the county commissioners. We have a resolution on their docket. We hope to be operational by April. But there are a lot of facts involved. But let me just give you one example here. This is what happens frequently for individuals who have children with developmental disabilities. Their children outlive them. Okay, so there are a lot of people out there who wonder what's going to happen to my child with developmental disabilities when I'm gone. What's going to happen to them? There's nobody to come forward. This Guardianship Services Board will come a long way in that regard. Currently, we have a lot of people in Lucas County who have nobody to be their guardian. And I'm talking about guardianships, but I'm telling you, guardianships are not favored in the law. We do not, it's not our goal to take any people's rights away from them. Guardianships are only appointed when they're absolutely necessary, and we try to limit them. We're always looking for the least restrictive alternative. But unfortunately, there are people who need guardians, and so we appoint guardians. And if you have a family member, that's fine, or a friend that's willing to be your guardian, that's fine. A lot of people don't. We have a bad situation in Lucas County. We have situations where we have attorneys who have been willing to come forward to be guardians for individuals because there's nobody else. And we pay them $350 a year to set it up and $150 a year to administer the guardianship. Well, if you're an attorney trying to run a law office, your $150 case is kind of on the back burner. And so it's very reactive. Things don't happen for wards until something has to be done. They get a call from a hospital, something needs to be done. We want to be more proactive. This Guardianship Services Board is going to have a director, and it's going to have social workers who will be more proactive, who will be looking out for these individuals on a proactive basis. And I'm just so excited about the concept. And we spoke at length with Commissioner Wozniak the other day, and she's fully on board. And we're finally gonna have a better system in this county. And as I say, for people with developmental disabilities and their families, it happens in my family. My daughter and her husband are concerned. What's going to happen to their 10-year-old daughter when they're gone? Who's going to look out for her? Who's going to do it? This Guardianship Services Board, people will be able to get to know how this board works, how it functions, and they will be comfortable that there are people out there that care and are going to be proactive in looking out for their child with developmental disability. So I'm just very excited about that program. And we hope to say I was operational in April, and we hope to get an executive director on board in the next couple of months and begin that process. But we got slowed down a little bit by COVID, as I guess everybody has. But I shouldn't do shout outs, I guess. But those of you out there I know are familiar with Lori Mariucci and Scott Silak and Tina Wozniak, and these people are really stepping up, and I really appreciate what they're doing.
Appreciate that. I know when you first mentioned that whole concept about the guardianship, almost a year ago, you were talking about it. You were enthused and excited then. You haven't lost any of it.
I have not.
Thank you.
We're going to get this done. I just feel so good about it.
Thank you. Thank you. We have questions for Judge Poffenberger, specifically for the probate judge.
APSI is, I'm looking at the chat too, Lana.
Yeah.
APSI is APSI. Adult Protective
APSI,
Services,
isn't it?
Adult Protective Services, Inc. And as I say, until last year, they were the only statutory entity that could be a guardian other than an individual. But that law changed last year, and now counties are allowed to have a Guardianship Services Board. But Lon, thank you very much. It's always good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you. Thank you. And those are our candidates for office. There was one individual that we were not able to contact, and his campaign office did not get back to us, and that is Earl Mack, who is running for Lucas County Sheriff. He's the third candidate that Mike Navarre mentioned, but we did reach out. Unfortunately, we weren't able to make back and forth comment. This was the time we set aside for Brett Harbage, but I'm not seeing him online with us. Am I missing him, Lisa?
Nope.
Okay, well, we can wait a few more minutes and see if he materializes, and then I would like to ask those who are still with us this evening that if you would like to offer some comments on the forum or give us some ideas for next year, please don't hesitate to fire off an email to me at lonmitchell@lucasdd.info, and or anybody that's on the Commission for Disabilities, the Toledo Lucas County Commission for Disabilities, or anyone at the Ability Center, because we're all working really well as the group Partners for Inclusion. The judge has his I Belong t-shirt on, which is one of the things we've been circulating from the Salute group. That's the self-advocacy group that is sponsored by the Lucas County Board of Developmental Disabilities. Well, I'm not sure Brett is going to make it. For those of you who would like to find out more about issues concerning voting, if you have any questions at all, many of them I'll bet could be answered in the podcast that I did with Brett not too long ago. You can listen to that on the Lucas County Board of DD website. That's lucasdd.org, www.lucasdd.org. And Lisa, I believe that Brett was with one of the webinars sponsored by the Ability Center, and I would believe that is still available. Yes?
Yep, and Brett just came on.
Oh, there he
online.
is. Brett, thanks for joining us this evening. We were worried you wouldn't get here in time.
Yeah, sorry, I was having trouble getting the link there. Thanks for sending that out to me, Lisa.
We invited you specifically to address some of the concerns that keep popping up about voting and individuals with disabilities. And the ones that I think of right away are, if someone has a guardian, are they still permitted to vote? How secure are the absentee ballots, and what is the process for an absentee ballot? And are you allowed to have someone as a helpmate go with you to the polls?
Yeah, your first question, you asked specifically about guardianship. You know, a lot of people with disabilities have a guardian for other affairs, maybe financially or whatever it may be. But guardianship does not affect your right to vote unless a probate court judge has, you know, taken that specific right away from you. So, which doesn't happen very often in the state of Ohio. So if you have a guardian, that should not be affecting your right to vote. So, and then what was your second question? You threw a lot of questions.
Are you allowed to have a helpmate come with you to the polls?
Yeah, absolutely. You have a couple different choices actually when it comes to getting assistance at the polling locations, or for early in-person voting as well. So, one, you can bring somebody with you on election day. That can be a person of your choice. There's only a couple of people that aren't allowed to help you. That'd be your employer, an agent of your union if you're part of a union, and then obviously somebody that's on your specific ballot. You are not allowed to bring that person with you for obvious reasons. So pretty much anybody that, you know, a family member, a friend, you can bring with you to provide assistance, you know, while you cast your ballot. And then if you don't have anybody to come with you, two poll workers from different political parties are required to assist you, you know, however you may need assistance. So you have a couple of different options when it comes to getting assistance on election day, or if you want to go down and vote early in person. So,
for example, assistance could be you are blind or have a vision impairment. You need somebody to read the ballot to you. That's permitted?
Yeah, you could have a family member or a friend read the ballot to you. Although, you know, if you go to the polls on election day or early in person down to your board of elections, you know, there is a detonate a machine there that's ADA compliant and it has an audio ballot on it that will read the ballot to you as well. So that's an option too. The machine has that capability to read the ballot to you. But yeah, if you wanted somebody to read that ballot to you, that's more than permissible. So yeah.
Let me ask Judge Poffenberger to come in here for a question I see popping up on the chat. And this concerns guardianship. If appointing a guardian, does that apply to my child only after my death, or when would a guardianship become effective?
Well, a guardianship becomes effective upon the appointment of the guardian by the probate court. So it's not effective upon your death. A guardianship would require a statement of expert evaluation where a physician would have to certify that this individual is not capable of handling their own affairs and a guardianship is necessary. And that would take effect immediately upon appointment of the guardian. That's when it happens.
But parents should be aware that age 18 is when somebody becomes their own guardian, unless they step in and come into your court.
That's correct. And we sometimes people file applications a little bit before the 18th birthday. We can file it before then, so it takes effect on the 18th birthday. We've had those filed, and we can do that also. You can also, if I think to maybe answer the question better, what you can do is you can have in a document such as your will, you can nominate a guardian to be the individual's guardian upon your death. So in addition to a regular will where you say where you want your assets to go upon your death, you can nominate a guardian, and a probate court is required to appoint that guardian unless the court finds that person to be unsuitable. So you can actually nominate a guardian for an individual in a will.
Thank you. Thank you. You're a handy man to have around. Back to Brett. My other question concerned the process for gaining an absentee ballot, and just what is our Secretary of State saying about the security of our absentee ballots, the mailing in of ballots?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the security goes, we've been doing absentee voting by mail for, 10 years. So it's nothing new here in the state of Ohio. And it's definitely a secure process. There's no question about that at all. But if you're interested in getting an absentee ballot in the mail, all registered voters in the state of Ohio should have received an application already. Those went out, about a month ago. But if you didn't receive that, or you don't have that application, you do have to fill out an application, get that on our website, or call your county board of elections. They can mail one out to you. And we're highly recommending the deadline, the statutory deadline to have those requests in for an absentee ballot is October 31st, but we're highly recommending that you do it, as soon as possible, but no later than October 27th, just to give yourself enough time to get that request in and get a ballot sent to you. And then a lot of people have been asking me questions about, well, when do I sent my application in, when do I get my ballot? Ballots aren't legally allowed to go out until October 6th. So, we have a few more days here. As soon as registration closes on the 5th, October 6th, county boards of elections will start sending ballots out, that they've already received applications for. So, those will be going out here in 5 days. So, and, once you get your ballot, you can, the nice thing about voting by mail is, you have a little bit of opportunity to, kind of see who's on your ballot, do some research, talk to family, friends, people you trust, make your decisions, and then you got to send that ballot back to your county board of elections. You got two options to do that. You can do it by mail, make sure it's postmarked by November 2nd, or you can drop it off in person. Every county board of elections in the state of Ohio has what we call a ballot drop box at their board office, and you can do that, drop that off. You got to do that by 7:30 p.m. on election day. So, it's obviously people are worried about COVID-19. So, absentee voting by mail is going to be a good way to vote this year. So, or for the November election.
And a concern, of course, being that if you wait to the last minute to get that absentee ballot in the mail, as slow as the mail has been going lately, would there be enough time? And you said earlier, get it in early. As soon as you get that ballot, fill it out, get it back in the mail.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just, the sheer volume, obviously a lot more people are going to be voting absentee by mail. So, you get your ballot, fill it out, make your choices and get it back into the Board of Elections. That way there's no issue at all. You don't even have to worry about it if you do it right away and get it into the board. So.
And the other concern that is popping up in the chat, absentee ballots don't have to be postmarked if you put them in the drop box at the Board of Elections, correct?
Correct. You're just dropping your envelope that you put your ballot back into at the drop box at the Board of Elections, and those are collected on a daily basis by a Democrat and a Republican election official there at the board office. So, yeah, they don't need postmarked if you're dropping them at the board office in the ballot drop box.
Or by mail, no UPS, no FedEx.
Yeah, you just want if you're going to send it back by mail, just regular U.S. postal. Those do have to be postmarked by the Monday, the November 2nd, so the day before the election.
Using both the inner and outer envelope, even if you drop it in the drop box.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a question in Lucas County. Did early in-person voting start already? When does early voting start in Ohio?
Again, the day after registration closes, which is October 5th. So early in-person starts October 6th. And that's at your county board of elections or if they have a designated early vote center, which there's only a handful of counties that have a separate early in-person voting location.
In Lucas County, it's on Monroe Street at 13th. And the drop box, though, is in front of the government center where the Board of Elections is located.
That's correct. I do. They just actually got a new drop box. I was talking to their director there last week, and it's placed in front of their board office in the plaza, I believe there.
Any other questions for Mr. Harbage from the Secretary of State's office? Well, that's great. I appreciate everybody being here tonight for our Voters Forum, again, sponsored by the Toledo Lucas County Commission on Disabilities and by the Ability Center, by the Lucas County Board of Developmental Disabilities and Partners for Inclusion. Thanks, everybody, for being with us. Again, if you have any questions at all or any suggestions for future activities, please contact me, Lon Mitchell at lucasdd.info. Thank you, everybody. Been a pleasure.
Thank you.